and it came from Scott Smith, who is the site manager at NAS Whidbey, and it said, Mayor, on Super Bowl night, we had a major sewage lift station failure, unprecedented, and ran out of in-house and commercial options to triage before base operations kicked in this morning. We were scrambling for any option. A call to the city inquiring about renting a Vector truck led to your Public Works Department and Steve Beebe. Their idea to deploy the city's portable pipeline system prevented a major multi-day impact to NAS Whidbey Island and operating commands. Details in the attached document. He sent a document along with this, but he says, as the base maintenance site manager, I cannot thank your Public Works team enough. Steve personally provided technical guidance and supported the equipment loading late at night. We owe the city big time and hope to reciprocate down the road. I will be meeting with Kathy to ensure we cover all costs for the city, and we will return the equipment in very good shape. I have relayed this to base leadership, and more will be coming from that channel. Look forward to seeing you at the task force meeting this week. Scott and I have talked, and he just talked about the amazing support. And of course, it was a cold, snowy evening, and the only report I could, or the only thing I could say was, we do have a fabulous team of employees, and happy and excited for that help. So thank you. Let me see, I think that concludes my comments. So we'll go to council. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I wanted to thank the police department, especially the chief, for inviting us to their second annual award ceremony, and it was really, really nice. It is so nice to see others honored in other departments, and it was with class, very, very well done, and very deserving to many people in that department. So I was so thankful that they had included us.
Great. Yes, Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, I'd like to thank Mr. Hovey for coming tonight and commenting. It's always great when the public take the time. I know you attend a lot of meetings, Hal, and I certainly appreciate you. I did want to comment just a little bit on some of the things that came out of the workshop involving the 4th of July. You know, while I'm certainly disappointed that the Chamber has decided to hold the 4th of July festivities elsewhere other than in the park, I'm certainly excited. We got a splash park that we're going to be doing a soft opening for the weekend after schools get out. We are going to have a beautiful facility when we get through all these bumps and grinds. I am certainly, however, disappointed that I feel as though we did let possibly the Chamber and some of the community down by not having a plan and not having the park open for the 4th of July like we committed. And so I did want to share that, my feelings about that. With that said, you know, we're going to have a beautiful new park when this gets done. We're going to have a beautiful splash park running throughout the summer for the kids to enjoy. And sounds like we're going to have some sod down for some of the activities to take place later in the summer. So we'll turn these lemons into lemonade and have a wonderful event this summer and you know, and have a park to enjoy for many years to come. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Council comments? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move to city administrator comments, and Mr. Olborn is at the podium.
Yes, I'm prepared to give a long speech. No, I have the next item after, so it makes sense for me to just be up here for both items. This week, I plan on attending the Parks Legislative Days this Thursday to advocate for the city's regional park youth activities field grant, the $350,000 grant that we have in the budget. It just missed the governor's budget, so we need to advocate to get it funded, and so it's a really important project and really important for the region, and so I appreciate all the staff help in helping me prepare my packet material, and look forward to meeting with the legislators and advocate for that project. My second item is this, I've kind of discussing with some of the council members, I'm working on a lot of items, and so I think I'm going to move towards probably a monthly written report, and I plan on doing that at least a minimum at the next upcoming council meeting to kind of give you an update of all the various things I have my hands into, and get your input on that. And then lastly, I thank the city clerk for putting out a calendar again, highlighting the upcoming city council dates that you need to be aware of. That concludes my report.
Okay, then, yes, Councillor Eisen.
Thank you. Just quickly, is there anything that, well, we or I can do to help you on Thursday? If we could include something or write up something, if there's just anything you need in terms of the advocacy for parks, the regional parks specifically, just let me know.
Yeah, any of the council members, we can send out a little note to you, and certainly you're welcome to contact the legislators in our District 10 and advocate for it. So, and then also the governor's office and advocating for it. I think all that would help.
For sure. Yeah, it would be helpful to see what materials you're going with so that we can, have a unified front when we're sending our...
Okay, I'll
Thank
make a
you.
note of that.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Thanks, Mayor.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Mr. Osborne, the chamber today sent out a flash brief because they have some legislation that's going to affect a lot of the small businesses in town. It was due by 5 o'clock, your testimony, but it wouldn't help if you did not get that email. I can be sure that you get a copy of it, but it never hurts to reiterate what was said, even though maybe one deadline went by. We won't know how it turned out today for a day or two, but we need to help our businesses in town. But it was how they do shifts and can't do this and can't do that, and it's really tying their hands for someone that has like 3 employees or 4.
Wow.
And there are quite a few businesses in town that do.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're on the blast from the chamber or not, but it was a very well written and done with the facts and the legislators, who to contact and what bill it was. I'm sorry, I don't remember what House bill it was,
Yeah.
but I can be sure get it to you, and I know Christine Cribb would love to, but it never hurts to have that other information in your other pocket when you're just talking, so.
Yeah. Also, good point. On the calendar date there, the February 13th to the 15th is the Association of Washington Cities Action Days, and I think the mayor, I, and our council member Wassinger is attending. So certainly we've got our 6 main areas. We'll probably add 2 other areas, and I'm certainly welcome to some other areas as we go along that we need to ask them to focus on. My visit this week, I'll probably mainly focus on that YAF, since I'll be park areas, but I'll be back the next week, and never been to Olympia yet, and I get it 2 weeks in a row, so it kind of stacks up there. But we've already done the prep, and I think we're going to get some material tomorrow for the Navy issue that we've talked about, and then also we've been also pushing for, when I went to the Council of Governments, the increasing the construction date for the roundabouts on 20, I think, is a good project that we should advocate that wasn't in our original 6 items.
Okay. Okay, we will conclude the administrator comments and move to number 6 on our agenda, public hearings and meetings. To speak during a scheduled public hearing or meeting, says please sign in, but I'll certainly give you a chance whether you signed in on the sheet or not. To ensure comments are recorded properly, please state your name clearly into the microphone, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes to ensure all citizens have sufficient time to speak. Item number 6A is Resolution 1904, declaring the Sleeper Road property surplus. Mr. Olborn?
Yeah, there's a lot of good information in the packet on the Sleeper Road property. The city has owned it for some time, quite a while. I think it was purchased for mining, and it just never made sense for the city to go ahead and do that. It's way outside of city limits. We last discussed it at the November 2018 council workshop, gave a number of options, and it looked like the council was leaning towards declaring the property surplus so we can go ahead and sell the property. We've had a number of interest in the property. Good thing about the news here with with being a public format is people, we had some interest before that, and then we've had some interest shown after we've got the publicity that this property was possibly for sale. So it's all ready for you to conduct the hearing and go ahead, and if the council wants to see through it, they can go ahead and make a motion to pass that resolution and declare it surplus.
Okay, so we'll open that public hearing at this time and ask if there's anybody from the public here that would like to speak to this. Mr. Solon?
Thank you, Council. My name is John Solon. I am the treasurer of the PBY Memorial Foundation and also a trustee. Been doing that basically for the past 5 years. I just wanted to advise everyone, I'm sure you probably are aware, that we have submitted a letter of intent for the museum to be one of the candidates considered for purchasing that property for our future museum site. And if it's appropriate, I just would like to ask a question of the process, assuming the resolution is passed, as to what sort of the timeline and next steps would be, if that's appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Solon. I think our city attorney can probably answer that question.
Sure. So at this point, if council decides that they are going to surplus the property, we are going to get an updated appraisal to determine what we should list it for, and then we're going to go ahead and list it ourselves and give people an opportunity to go ahead and basically put in a bid and tell us what they're willing to pay for it. So that's our process at this point.
So anyone else for comment on this from the public? Okay. Seeing none, we'll take it to council. Mayor Pro Tem?
I move to approve.
Wait, I thought we were going to have some comments or questions here.
Councilor Wiesner?
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a question. I noticed you gave us a great chart about the revenue that's been generated by the property and the expenses associated with the property, but I don't see any acquisition costs. Do we know what kind of acquisition costs we had?
Sale costs?
No, purchase costs when we purchased the,
It's been quite a long time ago. I don't think we had. We took the data from what we had in the system, and that's what the finance director went ahead and prepared for you. It was purchased probably in the 50s. So
that
quite-
far back, huh?
Oh, yeah, it's quite a lot. I think it's in the report. I'm still learning everything, so I don't have a photographic memory yet. So, but I believe it was way back in the 50s here. So I think I must be accurate because I don't have
Yeah,
any
it
council.
didn't show anything in the
staff.
report as the age, but.
Yeah, right here, since the 50s, right
the
in the
50s?
report.
Okay,
Yeah, so we've owned it quite some long ago, so we didn't really have any information on the purchase of that property. It appears, like I mentioned in the report, that it was intent was to use it for mining, but we've had a lot of analysis on it. That's why it was quite, if you look at it, we've had quite a lot of analysis on this property because of the complexity of getting the value of the mining. We can update it because the data from the last couple of years ago on the mining, where they did all the testing and everything, will stay the same. They'll just get it up to market rate. And when we talked about the possibility of mining it, and then, so we'll have that option out there too and talk about that. So, because we could have somebody mine it and then turn around and release it to them for mining and give it back to us. So that might be an option we can look at when we go through the process of surplusing the property.
so it's possible we may look at the lease for the gravel reserves?
Well, the data will have that in there, so, but how we make it available, I think the flexibility is there with the resolution. And Nikki, you can help me out here to make sure I'm in the right direction here.
I guess I was not aware that we were considering doing the lease for the mineral rights. My understanding is that we were updating the appraisal to market value to go ahead and liquidate.
Had we done any research at all in the option of leasing out the mineral rights?
I think we talked it last time. I guess we can open it up. Our preference is to sell it. I mean, it will have the data in it for mineraling if somebody wants to purchase it and mineral it, because it has quite a lot of data in that appraisal.
And in the end, are you, either of you aware, have we ever logged this parcel before, or is this the
Oh, yeah.
first time?
It's before that? I'm
Yeah,
not
prior to
aware that we logged it before.
2015, so in the 50, 60 years that we've owned it, it's probably when the timber grew, I'm assuming?
I'm not aware. We did plan it for future harvesting, but it's gonna be quite a long time before we harvest it again, but
Imagine
that's
40 years or so.
yeah, that's what we took out. So they forced it when they harvested, and you can see the money we made from it. So we made quite a lot of.
And of course, right now with it being in the city rolls, it's not generating any tax revenue.
It's outside of city limits.
So it'd be.
So we
for the
talked
county.
about park possibly as an alternative use, but it would probably make a nice little or trail park and cyclist park, but it's outside of city limits, so it won't count, and it's a long ways contiguous to the city. So that's what we went through the various options, and that was one of them, and that's why I came, from the workshop, it seemed like the council wanted to go in the direction of just surplusing it, so that's what we wrote it up here. And it does have the flexibility of disposing what we feel is the best interest, so, of the mayor, so
Okay,
we can go in that direction.
okay, thank you.
Councillor Olmberg.
Thank you, Mayor. I support surplusing this for a variety of reasons, but also, Ms. Barza, Mr. Solin's question really wasn't asked. He was looking for kind of a timeline, or a frame. You gave us, say, that we're going to go through the appraisal, we're going to go through the listing process. Can you give us a better timeline from what you expect start to finish on putting this out for bids?
So I'm going to have to rely on Kathy to some extent. We contacted the original appraiser to update it, and we got a quote to update the appraisal. And in terms of timeline for the updated appraisal, that's something that I haven't had communication with the appraisal.
I don't know if we've actually figured that out yet. It just depends on how busy it is.
Often those appraisals can take 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And if he's already done this, this is an update one on that. So in brackets, approximately, we're looking at 4 to 6 months before this thing will be in the public, be available to the public. Would you say that's a reasonable expectation?
Should we go with 2 to 6 months? Let's be a little bit more flexible.
I think I don't know that it might be 4, it could be 3.
Okay.
But it brackets it anyway, so that we have some target dates in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's, if the PBY Museum is very interested in this thing, timing is going to be important to them too, about having the funds available to compete with other bids.
Yes, but to some extent, we are in a holding pattern until we get that appraisal back. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. I remember the workshop where we talked extensively about this property, and we have logged it, and we seem to have gotten out of it what we're going to get in that particular area for quite a number of years. And then we looked at the cost of mining and gathering minerals from this property vice what we would get, or our net. And it was deemed at that time that it wasn't really worth it as far as what we could get from the property and the cost it would take to extract that. So I think that it not being worth it for us, I don't know if I would at this time pursue looking to lease this for the mineral rights. So at this point, I'm going to also recommend or support surplusing this property for sale.
Okay. Anyone else? Mayor Pro Tem?
I'll make a motion. If there's no more comments, I move to approve Resolution 19-04, declaring the Sleeper Road property surplus and authorize the mayor to proceed with sale of the property.
Second.
Okay, motion and second, and the motion reads exactly like it's recommended in the packet. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Councillor Wassinger. Seeing no other questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Oborn. We will move on to item number 6B then, which is resolution number 1907, surplus list 2019. Public Works Director Kathy Rosen.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Mayor, members of the council. What you have before you tonight with Resolution 1907 is a list of surplus items that were purchased with utility funds. In order to surplus those items, we need to hold a public hearing. Then council considers that input and makes a decision whether or not to adopt Resolution 1907. So what we're asking you to do tonight is hold the public hearing, consider that input, and then we're recommending that you adopt Resolution 1907 surplusing, declaring property that was acquired by utility funds as surplus. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And at this time, we'll have that public hearing and ask if there's anybody from the public that would like to speak to this. Okay, seeing none, bring it up to City Council. Any questions or any, Councillor Heisen?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a kind of a technical question. What's the difference between, like procedurally, between surplusing things purchased with utility funds and not? Because the non-utility purchased was in the consent agenda, and then this is a separate list.
There is an RCW that requires that any items that were purchased with utility funds, if we want to dispose of them, we have to hold a public hearing on it. It's just it's an RCW.
Okay. That's it.
Okay, Councillor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we approve Resolution 1907, the surplus list 2019, as presented.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve Resolution 1907 as presented. Motion by Councillor Larson, second by Councillor Heisen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that
Thank
too
you.
passes unanimously. Okay, we will now go to 7B, which is Resolution 1906, intention to assume Oak Harbor Transportation Benefit District Number 1 per RCW 3674, and we have our city attorney, Nikki Esparza. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and members of City Council. My first item this evening is Resolution 1906, which, if passed, will declare the council's intention to assume the Oak Harbor Transportation Benefit District Number 1, which is a separate quasi-municipal corporation. The City Council passed Ordinance 1835 back in May of 2018 and created the district in order to access alternate funding mechanisms for road projects. The Transportation Benefit District has met on several occasions to talk about how these road projects would be funded, but no levies or financial obligations have been undertaken by the board. So now is a good time to consider whether or not the council wants to absorb the district and make it a part of the city instead of leaving it as a separate quasi-municipal corporation. So since the law has changed a few years ago, a lot of the cities that have TBDs have absorbed them. Certainly the finance director prefers this approach because it makes it much easier to do the books. Instead of having to do two separate sets of books, she can just have a separate fund for the district. It will simplify the administration of the funding and create efficiencies, allow staff to more easily work through all of the issues that come with this district. Just use it as a part of the city. It'll be easier. So if this resolution is passed, the next step is an ordinance that will do away with the TBD. That will be set for March 19th, which will also be the time of the public hearing. The public hearing has to be noticed at least 2 weeks prior, and this resolution sets the date of the hearing and requires that notice. So at this point, it's staff's recommendation to approve Resolution 1906.
Okay, before we do that, we'll see if the public has any comment about this, any input or questions? Okay, seeing none. City Council, any questions or motions, or Councilor Omber?
Seeing no questions for anything else, I'll make a motion that we approve Resolution 1906.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve resolution number 1906. A motion made by Councilor Almberg and second by Mayor Pro Tem Munns. Seeing no questions, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That passes unanimously. So that was 7B. We will go on to 8A. This is, section number 8 is contracts and agreements. So 8A is a construction contract award to Interwest Construction, Inc., SR 20 Banner Road Water Main Replacement Project, and we have our city engineer, Mr. Bridges, here.
Thank you. We're here tonight to recommend the award of the bid we received for the, let me make sure I get the name of the project, the SR 20 Banter Road Water Main Replacement to Interwest Construction Incorporated in the amount of $1,395,654.74, and authorize during the construction, if needed, myself to approve change orders up to $100,000 in total. On January 29th, we received 3 bids for the project. The aforementioned bid from Interwest Construction, another bid from SRV Construction for $1,589,639.67, and the third bid from C. Johnson Construction Incorporated for $2,187,641.85. We had an engineer's estimate of $1,645,000 for the project. We reviewed the bids for completeness and responsiveness and found them to be appropriate, and it is our recommendation to award the bid to, I believe it was ISI Construction, Interwest Construction, excuse me. And I'll stand for questions.
Okay, first see if we have anybody from the public who would like to. Okay, seeing none. Council, yes, Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. I was glad when you talked about the wording of this recommended action, that you said authorizing the city engineer to execute contract change orders up to $100,000 in total.
Correct.
Because when I read that, initially I had highlighted that because it just said execute contract change orders up to $100,000. And so if there were multiple ones of those, so I just wanted to make sure that we were clear that, because that's 7% of the contract right there. If there were multiple contract changes up to $100,000 each, that would be quite the cost overrun. So is there going to be language that ensures that that's in total? Because the way this is written in our packet is a little vague.
I think the direction's here, so we'll follow the way the motion, and I think I would add the word total in there.
Thank you.
Any other? Yes, Councilor Almberg.
Thank you. You know, I'm with Mr. Larson on that one too, and typically we have a limit on the total change orders on the contract. So can we have language that just says that we're awarding this for $1,395,654, and we always have up to 7% or 10% or $100,000 without coming to the council. We've always had a limit, because I think the way Mr. Larson even expressed that, this could be multiple change orders.
I would just recommend adding the word total in there, and we'll try to be more clear in the future.
With a total change order not to exceed $100,000.
$100,000, yeah. He doesn't Yeah, but it's close to a percentage, but yeah, I think staff is comfortable with 100,000.
It comes out to just about 7%,
Yeah.
which seems reasonable, especially on an underground project like this.
Other, yes,
If
Councilor
there's no
Holmberg.
further comments or anything, I'll make a motion then. A motion to authorize the award of the construction contract for the SR20 Banta Road water main replacement to Interwest Construction, Inc. in the amount of $1,395,654.74 and not to exceed any change orders beyond $100,000 without the approval of the council.
Okay, we've got a motion and second that's pretty close to the recommended action. And did you get that wording, Carla? Not to exceed?
Not to exceed change orders of 100,000 without consent of the council.
Okay, any questions about that? Okay, so we've got a motion by oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Councilor Eisen, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. The motion doesn't explicitly authorize the city engineer to execute said change orders. Is that implied, or do we need to specify that it's the city engineer that's authorized to make said change orders? I mean, we all know what that means, but
It should be the city engineer because the city engineer is not typically authorized to make change or make contracts up to that amount.
okay. So can you read the motion for us, Carla?
Move to authorize awarding the construction contract for the SR20 Banta Road water main replacement to Interwest Construction Incorporated in the amount of $1,395,654.74 and authorize the city engineer to execute contract change orders not to exceed $100,000 without consent of council.
Okay, perfect. Just want to make sure that was in there. Thank you.
Is that all right? Okay.
We
So
have
the
a
motion.
second?
I think the motion was made by Councilor Holmberg and seconded by Councilor Servadius. Seeing no other questions, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
That passes unanimously. That was number 8A. Now we'll move on to 8B.
Mayor,
Yes.
I'm going to recuse myself from this item. The seller has a contractual agreement with a broker in my office.
Okay. Item number 8B is purchase and sale agreement, Matern Property, and we have our city engineer, or our city attorney back at the, gosh, just got a new title. Sorry about that.
That could be fun.
Sorry,
One of
Nikki.
many talents.
So, this item is the purchase and sale agreement of the Matern property. I came to you in executive session a few weeks ago, and we had a conversation about offer price on 4 acres of wetlands that are adjacent to the north of our 7th Avenue wetland property. And today I'm coming to you with a purchase and sale agreement. I had conversations with the listing agent about a sale price, and we came to an agreement at $80,000. The property is listed at $105,000, and we were able to negotiate $80,000. Staff believes that this piece of property is important to acquire because it is a part, or it is adjacent to our wetlands, and we know that it's important to protect those 7th Avenue wetlands for a lot of reasons, including but not limited to the hydrologic buffering effect that they have, protecting the properties that are in the southern end of the city, making sure that we're treating and processing the stormwater and letting it leave the wetlands at a slower pace. Another reason why acquiring this property is important is because our new NPDES permit is going to make requirements that cause us to acquire property and spend money to further protect our basins. We're going to need to address our stormwater on the basin level. Acquiring this property may allow us to get ahead of certain requirements of our NPDES permit. In addition, part of our sewer comp plan says that we need to run a trunk line down the valley, and In order to do that, we're going to need to acquire property or easement rights. If we acquire this 4 acres, we won't need to acquire an easement across those 4 acres because we'll already own it. If we put in a sewer trunk line, we're going to need an access road, and there will be an opportunity there for some recreational opportunities. If we put an access road in there, we could have a path through there. County has expressed some interest in connecting to Island County trails, and so that might be an opportunity to partner with Island County. Staff does believe that there are a lot of benefits to acquiring the Matern property and would recommend that council authorize the mayor to sign the purchase and sale agreement and any closing documents necessary to finalize the sale.
Thank you, Nikki. So we'll turn to the public, see if there's any questions or input, or Mr. Hovey?
Good evening again. My name's Hal Hovey still. I'd like to thank the city for bringing this real estate purchase before the council and as agenda item in the open public session so we could have an opportunity for public comment. I know that typically, certainly in the last couple years that I've been coming to the meetings, the real estate purchases are typically handled immediately following an executive session without any public discussion. So thank you very much for listening to my concerns and bringing it out for opportunity to talk and ask questions. I do have 2 questions about this purchase. First, was it already budgeted for 2019? And in paragraph 5 of the purchase contract, the contract indicates that the city has, it says the city council has authorized the property acquisition by condemnation, which is eminent domain. And I might have missed that meeting where the city council approved that, but perhaps that's what this meeting is the approval of the contract is also the approval to take the property by eminent domain if the contract is not agreed to. Thank you. Those are the only questions I have.
Okay.
I can
Go
answer.
ahead, Nikki.
I can answer both of those questions. First of all, we budgeted, well, stormwater budgeted $250,000 for property acquisition for stormwater improvements in the 2019 budget. We spent $160,000 plus closing costs on the Wright properties, and this property is going to cost us $80,000. So it is in fact budgeted. Second issue, paragraph 5 discusses eminent domain. Paragraph 5 also has a follow-up that says that the city council will pass an ordinance authorizing that if necessary. It's actually oftentimes a negotiating tool because it saves excise tax to the seller. So that is the reason for paragraph 5.
Okay. Any other public comments or questions at this time? Okay. Seeing none, we'll guess Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I would like to applaud the efforts of the city staff who have brought this forward. This is another example of really good people getting out ahead of an issue and not waiting until there's a problem. This makes so much sense ecologically, financially, possibly recreationally. As far as the benefits, it addresses concerns that we will have in the future for growth and development. And this is just one more example of people taking a real look at where are we and what do we have, but what do we need in the future and the best way to go about getting it. Everything about this acquisition, including the cost, I am wholeheartedly behind, and I am going to support purchasing this property for the stated reasons. Thank you.
Okay. Other council input or comments? Or Councilor Heisen?
I move to authorize the mayor to sign the purchase and sale agreement for the Matern property. Sorry, strike with.
Second?
Okay. Got a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to sign the purchase and sale agreement for the Matern property. A motion by Councilor Heisen, second by Mayor Pro Tem. Seeing no other questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That passes with our 6 councilors in session here. We'll invite Councilor Wiesner back and move on to item number 8C, which is professional service agreement, fire department ladder truck, Seagrave Fire Apparatus, LLC. We have our fire chief here, Chief Merrill.
Thanks, Mayor. Good evening, Council. As you remember from a workshop that we had a couple weeks ago, I brought to you a little problem that we were having with our ladder truck. We had a nice conversation about that over the course of about an hour and 15 minutes about our ladder truck. What we're here tonight to do is to get an authorization to have the mayor sign a contract with Seagraves in the amount of $157,111.07 for the refurbishment, as was recommended by the council, for our ladder truck. That's the short part. Now here comes a little bit longer part. We know that from the refurbishment there are going to be some other problems. So I don't want you to be surprised later on when we come back to you and say, we need a little extra money because of, and we know what some of the issues are, we don't know how much it's going to cost to get them fixed until it gets back to Seagraves. Specifically, the second fly section on the ladder, whether it can be repaired, replaced, or a brand new purchased, or a new one built and purchased. We know we have some problems with the lift cylinders. We don't know how much that's going to cost until it gets back to Seagraves. We are going to have the vehicle trucked across country because of the weather conditions. As you saw in the agenda bill, there is an initial inspection that's going to be done on the truck, at which time we will definitely confirm that a refurbishment is in the best interest of the truck and in the best interest of the city. Should it be determined that it's not in the best interest, Seagrave stops, we get a bill for not to exceed $5,000, and we're done. But after all the conversations I've had with Seagraves over the last month and a half, all the pictures back and forth and the discussions, they say this is an easily refurbishable truck and it'd be a pleasure to work on. And I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have, and I tried to keep it as short as I could.
Thank you, Chief. We'll first ask the public if there's any questions or input or, okay, seeing none. Councilor Larson?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Chief. For the record, I have a few questions. I know the answers to these, but I'd like to have you state them publicly. So this truck is 27 years old, correct?
That is correct.
It has less than 17,000 miles on it?
That is correct.
And what would the cost of a new truck outfitted similarly to this be right now?
$1.2 million to $1.5 million.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's all?
That's all.
Wow.
Yes, Councilor Olmberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief Merrill, do you have an expected top budget? If this goes back to Seagrave, what are you expecting the outside cost would be to refurbish this truck?
I'm thinking. That's a scary thing. It all depends. And that comes down to the biggest concern that we have going into this is the second section, fly section, as we talked at the workshop.
Right.
If it's repairable, that's within the scope of work for the $157,000. If it's not repairable and Seagraves has a second section fly assembly that they can rebuild, certify, and put on the truck, we're looking at about $20,000 for that fly section. If they have to build a new one, we're looking at about $50,000. So if we're looking at $157,000 and we look at the top end at $50,000, we're up to $207,000. If they can repair the control valves, we're looking at about $2,000 on the pedestal. If not, it's about $10,000 for the control valve assemblies. We don't know about the lift cylinders. That could be in the neighborhood of $3,000 to $4,000 repair work on the lift cylinders. I do not anticipate this going anywhere over $250,000. I look at it to be the lower end of the $230,000 to $240,000.
I was trying to add things up while you're continuing.
How close
on that.
am I?
Yeah, you're actually
I'm pretty close, aren't I?
Yeah, you'll be between 225, 250 in that range. So the total cost on the outside, the worst scenario for that we can expect right now would be roughly 250. So that it's 250 total.
Total.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's transport back and bringing the vehicle back to here.
That's correct.
That's all inclusive.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
And we're looking to buy, 5 to 7 years out of that truck more.
Maybe 10.
Maybe 10.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Question for our Finance Director. on the schedule, they gave the cost of the contract within 30 business days. We need to pay them 94,000 plus, and then an additional 42 from the customer within 10 business days of delivery, the third-party test results, and then 15,000 at the end. Is this normal how they separate? I was just
We
kinda
actually
curious.
contacted them and they wrote an email we'll be attaching to the signed, if you approve this, to the signed contract, that indicated that they're going to invoice us after they've received it, because 30 days, we transport it there, they start looking at it, we would have had to start cutting a check 15 days in to get it to them within 30. So they've actually agreed that they will invoice it once they have the truck and they've inspected it. So that gives us plenty of time to cut the check.
Alrighty. And comment to the chief, we had asked some questions about whether or not Anacortes might be able to pitch in and help if the Navy couldn't. And thank you, chief, for doing the research on that. And so it looks good. I mean, it's possible without a technical interlocal agreement with them. So I appreciate the extra effort, chief, for checking into that very much.
Other council questions? Yes, Councilor Olmberg.
Thank you, Mayor. No other comments then. I move that we authorize the mayor to sign a contract with Seagrave Fire Apparatus LLC for the refurbishment of Ladder 81 in the amount $157,111.07.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second that is just like the recommended action motion by Councilor Olmberg, and who got that second? That was Councilor Larson, okay. Seeing no other questions, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
Thank you, council.
Thank you, Chief. We will move on to item number 8D at this time. Supplemental Agreement Number 1 to the David Evans and Associates Consultant Agreement, Veterans Memorial Park Waterfront Trail Enhancement. We have our city engineer back, Mr. Bridges.
Thank you. This is a supplemental agreement to extend the contract for David Evans and Associates in the amount of $77,902 to provide site inspection, project testing, materials testing, and certification, special inspections of the park during construction. Earlier tonight, you approved on the consent agenda to go out to advertisement and the supporting documents to Washington State Department of Transportation. This is housekeeping on the other side, so when we do award and do go to construction, we already have the inspection services in place. So it's staff's recommendation to approve this contract with David Evans and Associates in the amount of $77,902, and I will stand for your questions.
Okay, before we do, let's see if the public has any input or questions. Seeing none, Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. Is it normal for the cost to oversee and bill and inspect a project to be 25% of the overall budget?
This is going to provide full-time inspection, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week during the construction of the project. So that's why it's a little bit higher than what we normally think. You know, when we're inspecting a project in-house, our inspector's going out there a couple hours a day or a couple hours at a time, not actually on the project full-time. This is full-time inspection. There are certain site special inspections that go along with this that require that full-time inspection and the materials testing. So it does seem high, I agree with you, but it is for full-time, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week construction inspection.
And I realize this is a state-funded grant and that we have to follow all of the rules. I find it incredible that between design and construction inspection, we're almost 60% of the budget. It's going to cost less to actually build this than it costs to design it and inspect it.
I think the actual construction cost estimate is $140,000. So it's less than half of the construction cost, but it's a big number to boot. So
Yeah, 'cause it looks like we're spending about $145,000 with
yeah.
Evans and Associates. And obviously, again, I just want to make sure I'm clear, obviously all mandated by the grant funds and
Yeah, and the big
tied
dri-
to the grant funds.
Right, and the big driver here is our DBE goal, which are disadvantaged business enterprise, and then the wage analysis or the wage rate studies that have to go on at the same time. So we have to make sure that the employees are paid the prevailing wages. So there are interviews with employees during the day, making sure they understand what their wage scale is and they're getting paid properly, so we don't get bit in the audit. All this comes back to the city if we get bit in an audit that we have to possibly refund money back to the state or the feds in this case.
So this $72,000 is saving us from a $265,000 exposure.
That's correct.
That's what you're telling me. And this is about a 4-month project, is that correct?
I'm not sure on the timeline. That's, the project was developed before I got here, so I'm not
Well, 'cause
quite sure.
I'm assuming it's multiple months for the 72,000.
408, I know they've got 480 hours of scheduled observation. So that's, what is that?
3 months at least.
Yeah, 3 months.
Okay, thank you.
Other council input or questions? Yes, Councilor Wassinger.
No other questions. I will make the motion authorizing the mayor to sign the supplemental agreement number 1 to the consultant agreement with David Evans and Associates that adds $77,902 to the contract, increasing the total contract amount from $14,834 to $92,736 for construction management and full-time construction inspection services on the Veterans Memorial Park Waterfront Trail Enhancement Project.
Second.
So we've got a motion and a second, and the motion is exactly like, reads exactly like the recommended action in the packet. Motion by Councilor Wassinger, second by Mayor Pro Tem Munns. Seeing no other questions, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously also.
Thank you.
Mr. Bridges. So we will now discuss item number 7A, ordinance number 1866, budget amendment number 1 to the 2019-2020 budget. We have our finance director here, Patricia Soul.
Thank you very
Patricia?
much, Mayor. I am bringing forward the first budget amendment to our 2019-20 budget, and it is composed of 2 parts. The first part is for the Banta Road Roundabout Transmission Main Replacement Project, and it is for $1 million. The total project is now increased from $800,000 to $1,584,855, which is an increase of $784,855. The second one is for the fire ladder truck. We are asking council to approve movement out of cash in the general fund budget that was moved there from the stability fund excess into the beginning fund balance for the general fund to the tune of $167,112. If you look at page 525, I summarized it in both of them in an Excel spreadsheet that it's easier for me to kind of go through to help you guys understand. So the Banta Road project is increasing by $784,855. It is being funded by water fund balance in the for $702,555, and the Navy's contribution is increasing by $82,300 for the 24-inch, which brings us from $800 up to $1,584,855. We broke out the project expenses, so we have $87,200 for professional services, $2,000 for advertising. We increased construction services by $595,655, and we added in $100,000 for the change order allowance. That's what got us to the $784,855. Now, if we go to the fire truck, which is on the next bracketed section, it shows that our beginning fund beginning fund balance that's been budgeted in general fund is currently at $2,353,662. We are adding $167,112 to the beginning fund balance, and we're increasing the fire department's expenses for the repair and maintenance on the fire truck. If you look down here in the stability fund, I'm keeping track so you guys can see what we're asking for. So we moved $1,569,343 into cash out of the stability fund that we did not budget. By budgeting this $167,112, it leaves $1,402,231 of the stability fund transfer, not budgeted. And I'll take any questions.
Okay, first we'll ask the public if there's any questions or input. Okay, seeing none, we'll, yes, Councilor Servadius.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Soul, thank you for this specific page that you just referenced. I just want to remind my peers, when we went through the workshop and we talked about freeing up the stability fund, we all talked about making sure that it was earmarked and there were very specific projects and purposes this money was designated for. And Chief, I'm not taking anything away from you. I do support refurbishing that ladder truck versus buying a new one, but this is the first of an exodus out of those funds. So I want to make sure we're paying attention when we need some new parkland or we need whatever we need, that this is one of the places that we talked about getting it and making sure that we kept track of that. So thank you for this page. I'm going to keep an eye on it.
Councilor Omber.
Thank you. And on that fire truck issue, that's $167,000. What happens if the unexpected happens? We have to come back for a few more dollars. That means we have to amend this budget again?
So it'd be a change order request that you guys would have to approve, and then I would follow that change order request with a budget amendment request.
And we could take that out of the fire budget?
We could take it out of beginning fund balance, or council could choose to use more stability fund. That would be a choice that I'm hoping that I would know about before I created the budget amendment. But yeah, so that would be the mayor and Blaine giving me heads up on how we want to go forward.
Okay, thank you.
Blaine?
And we would likely do it the same way we did here.
Okay.
So just, yeah, and it's a good question. That's what I was going to make sure you're aware of, just like the fire chief mentioned, that there's a strong possibility that there's additional amount of funding. We base the purchase order in this amendment based upon what we do know, but we know highly likely that there's going to be some unknowns that are going to come back at additional cost. So unless you direct us otherwise, we're going to assume the same way we did this and come back with a amendment and tap the cash that we have again.
And it's my understanding, or based on my memory from the workshop and all the discussions we've had about this item, is that there is some contingency funds included in that $167,000.
No.
We had some ranges in there because we don't know exactly how
The
much.
range, well, it started out with 157, and then we added 10,000 for transportation. But it's going to range, I think he put from 150 to 250, and so we feel that it won't be over. We're hoping it's not going to be over 250. If it is, then we'll probably reassess, and that actually pushes it into the retrofit, which is a lot more money, and I don't know whether it's worth to put that much money beyond 250 into the 27-year-old truck, but we're hoping it's the odds are in our favor that it'll be under 250,000. We had a lot of talk about staff, whether we just build it with it, but normally we don't put contingency. We do in construction contracts, but not in purchase order or repairs like this. So we just want you to aware that it's going to come in two phases. It's what we know now. Once it gets there, they'll do the assessment and we'll get a firm commitment on what the additional costs are, and then we'll come back and do another amendment agenda, and then I would draw it the same way that we did now, unless you direct otherwise.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Mayor.
Mayor?
Yes.
May I just state, so because we did the project accounting the way we've done it this year, when projects start bumping up against the budget that's there, I'll be doing what I did tonight. So for Banter Road, when we got the bids in and they were higher than what the estimates were, I will be coming forward with a budget amendment, identifying the revenue stream as well as increasing the project total. So that's different than what we've done in the past, but I feel like it's more transparent and it tells us truly what we expect the cost to be.
Okay. Any other questions, input? Yes, Councilor Servadius.
No other questions. I move to approve budget amendment number 1 to the 2019-2020 biennial budget for Banter Road roundabout transmission main replacement project and fire ladder truck repairs.
Second.
Okay, you've got a motion and a second. The motion is just like the recommended action in your packet. Motion by Counselor Servadius, second by Counselor Heisen. Seeing no other questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. We are now at item number 10A, City Council Work Phone Discussion. And I think we've got our Counselor Servadius scheduled to talk about this. Before he starts, I want to say that Counselor Servadius has been like our new employee the last, I don't know how many months he has spent in the various departments around our city helping install our new phones and our new equipment. And I can't thank him enough because I don't see his name on the payroll other than as a city council person. I can't thank him enough. Thank you, Mr. Servadius.
Thank you, Mayor. So, just talk from here? Yeah. Oh, fine. So the whole purpose of this is just to introduce Ring Central to the council, if you're not familiar with it, and then you guys need to decide if you want to use it or not. Long story short, as we transition the city's phones over to VoIP phones, along with that comes an application with a soft phone app. So you can use that on a cellular device, a mobile device, or a tablet. And there's, if you're going to go, well, first decision is, just for total transparency, each one of these lines, tax, title, tags, costs us about $20 a month. I don't know if you know, if we add up all the fees, that's just an approximation. So if you don't see yourself using it, we need to know that, and then we'll just let those numbers go. But if you do want to use it, it's available. So I'm just going to take you through the app, and I use this personally on, well, I have a business version of this that I've used for many years. So I use that on my cell phone, but for council, all of my telephone stuff is done on my iPad. And it's super simple, super easy to use. There's two apps. Unfortunately, the screen is not the best up there. But if you go look at this on an Android or in the Apple Store, there's two versions of the Ring Central app. One is called Ring Central Phone. It's simpler. I'd recommend that one. The other one is this one that has the fancy R, and it has more functionality into it, but it's probably features that many of you may not use. You might. Scheduling meetings, stuff like that. So the Ring Central Phone app is very straightforward. It's going to feel kind of like making a phone call on your regular cellular device. Is that as good as we get up there? Yeah. All right. You guys see this screen? So you've got down at the bottom here, if you had messages, you have messages. I had Dina call me, so there's a message right there. Recent calls, contacts, keypad to make a normal phone call, and then you can do much more as far as jumping out and scheduling meetings with that last icon, but we're going to not do that. So phone calls, what you need to know is if you're using this on your city device, it's totally separate from your, even if you're using it on your personal cell phone, you could use the soft app. All of the calls are placed through Ring Central. They don't go out over your cellular network. And you can actually choose right up here what you want the caller to see as far as a caller ID. I know you can't really see that up there, but you can choose, you all have a direct dial number, which for me is buried in the list up here somewhere. You could have it, for most of you, you're probably going to have it show up as the main city phone number of 279-4500. But it's a phone, it's a keypad. You dial and people answer. And whether you're talking through the speaker in your iPad, I always put in my, or I often just use headphones, and I'll make calls that way and return calls. Other things that I think are worthy of note in here is if you want, you can have it sync with all of your personal contacts or not. And you can have it'll just sync with the city's Outlook system. So you'd have all of staff's contacts in here. So if I start typing, let's say Soul, if you didn't know Patricia's extension, you'll see Patricia Soul show up right up there. You can just click on her extension. And then it's simple as hitting the little phone icon and I'm calling Patricia. So it's really handy if you don't know staff extensions. They're all right here. And once again, you have the option of whether or not you sync it with your own personal contacts as well. Or if you don't, the default is it syncs with all of the city Outlook contacts. Long story short, too, on messages, what's handy, so Dina called me earlier. If it is a new message, it is blue. If you had messages that had been listened to, they'd be black. So I can click on the message from Dina. I can listen to it very easily. You can't hear it because you can't hear my speaker. And then if I wanted to call Dina back, I just hit the big green button and I'm calling Dina Emery. So super simple, very easy. I think what I wanted to just show my peers was you can do it all on your city iPad. You don't have to use your cellular device if you don't want to. But if you want that functionality, you can also use it as a soft app on your phone. But all of the calls are tracked and stay out in the city system total. You could run a log if you wanted to, track it all out there. But I understand some people want to keep their personal device totally separate, so I'll get my iPad back in a minute. But any questions on that functionality? Like I said, just communicate with Patricia or Dina if you don't see yourself using that, and I'm happy to spend time off camera doing any training or teaching. But if you don't decide to use it or you don't think it's something you would use, just let us know, because it probably doesn't make sense to pay for the numbers.
Any questions? Yes, Councillor Wasson?
You answered my question. I was going to ask if this came with a personal training session to show me how to do that, because I think it does. You know, my first reaction was, oh man, would I really use that? But, and maybe we can talk about it more in a workshop when we have more time just to ask questions. But to me, it seems very helpful from a council member and staff perspective that it would be real easy for me to call a staff member if I had a question, and have that be also helpful for public records, possibly. Does that make sense, Nikki? Do you think for us maybe a little more helpful on your guys' part for public records request?
So the phone aspect of it isn't really important for public records requests. There's a messaging function that we've been discussing, and there is a method of capturing those, which we've also been discussing, which is going to be helpful if that's the route we go. But for purposes of the phone, that is something that is captured internally in the city's Ring Central system, and so we're good to go there.
Thank you.
Councillor Servadius?
Well, and so I've got it set up, you can turn on notifications. So if I was to get a message, I have it email me, not the message, because we've decided not to attach audio files to the messages, but it just says you've got a voicemail. And a little notification pops up. You can swipe down on your iPad, you've all seen the different notifications. So that's how I know I have a message. I'll get a notification that flashes on the iPad, and I get an email that says you've got a message.
Yes, Councillor Heisen?
Do we have to tell Dina if we want this so she can send credentials? Because I downloaded the apps and it wants me to sign in and says I have an existing account and I need to enter my credentials. I don't know what that means.
Yes, so, or I can do it. We send it, it's just a welcome email you get that says log on to your account. And I can walk you through setting that up. It's pretty.
Oh, that's what I did, but it told me I have the wrong password even though I just set up an account, so.
We can send you a new invite.
Anyone else? Well, again, thank you. Thank you, Joel. A lot of hard work.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other council business? So as you drive home tonight, remember that it's icy out there. So if you're walking, remember that it's icy out there. And be safe. And I guess, seeing no other business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
And a motion second.